from the idea to coding to debugging to setting up the backend and then publishing the app so others can use it. It's pretty powerful that you're able to do all this in one go. Hi, my name is Callum, also known as Wanderloots, and welcome to today's video on Firebase Studio, a full-stack AI workspace. Firebase Studio is a Google developer tool that adds AI coding to Firebase, a mobile and web development platform. Firebase Studio makes it incredibly easy to build apps from scratch or add more complex features to apps that you've already built. You can import from Git or GitHub and continue where you left off from tools like Google AI Studio. Google AI Studio is great for getting started, for testing out your ideas and building an MVP, for prototyping. But it doesn't easily connect to the full stack that's needed to build a production application. For that, you need things like a backend database and user authentication. That's where Firebase Studio comes in. In today's video, I give an overview of what Firebase Studio is along with how it compares to Google AI Studio. Then, I show you how to use the prototyping agent to build an app from scratch, including the framework for authentication and backend database. I also walk through how to connect GitHub for version control, how to set up a Firebase project, and how to go from placeholder code to functioning database and authentication systems. I share tips and tricks throughout the video on how to consider pricing and security of your app to help point you in the right direction as you build out your vision. I can only show you so much. The rest is up to you to vibe and figure it out. If you find this video helpful, please consider liking, hyping, and subscribing. Your support enables me to continue making these videos, so I appreciate it very much. Now let's build with Firebase Studio. What is Firebase Studio? Firebase Studio is an AI workspace that lets you build full stack applications. So what that means is you can build backends, front ends, mobile apps. You can build authentication, build a database, host your website, have storage, connect extensions, build an AI. There's a ton you can do, and it stacks it all in one place so that you're able to build full and complete applications, including mobile apps. It also has Gemini integrated, so you can use agentic AI. You can see there's the agent mode now from the Gemini Code Assist, where you're able to code directly with Gemini in Firebase Studio to build the app for you. So this is a bit different than Google AI Studio, like we can see here. I talk about this a lot more in how to build apps with Google AI Studio and how to deploy apps with Google AI Studio, my previous videos that a lot of people have been asking me about Firebase. And you can kind of think of Google AI Studio as a sandbox. I'm able to code in here, but I can't, for example, create a backend storage system or an authentication system and connect it all within Google AI Studio. I can deploy the app. Like you can see here in my previous video, I built this idea inbox where I'm able to write notes and then send them to Obsidian. This is hosted at its own website through Vercel. So Google AI Studio does let you build this front end and deploy it, which you can also do to Google Cloud Run here. But Firebase Studio takes this one step further and lets you build actual full stack applications with a backend, a database, authentication systems. There's a lot you can do here. It even has a prototyping agent where you can go into the prototyping mode, describe what you want, and it will be able to build the full app in one go. So I'm excited to test this out because with my Google AI Studio experience, I had to go back and forth a lot. So I'm curious to see if Firebase is able to build actually all of these elements, including the authentication system, which I've built into other apps that have taken me a couple weeks to get working. You can also import existing applications. So if you want to start in Google AI Studio, you can always download the file or connect it to GitHub. And then you can, in Firebase, import your repository so you're not starting from scratch. And what's also cool is that you can create a URL so that early testers can preview the app directly. And you can also work with other people. You can kind of think of this like a Google Docs for coding where you can have multiple people making changes at the same time. So that's pretty cool. And again, you're able to build Android apps, iOS apps, desktop apps, web apps, whatever kind of app you want. And you can even run an Android emulator, which makes sense because this is a Google product that it would be able to handle that. So this is a good way for you to not only test the web app, like I was showing you in previous videos with this idea inbox at the URL, but also being able to test to see how it would look on Android if you want to add it to the Play Store. And then by extension, how it would potentially work on the iOS App Store. So just very quickly before we get into the application itself, I want to just emphasize that there are a few elements here that are quite different than Google AI Studio, which is a great prototyping system, but Google AI Studio is more of a sandbox. It can't build the full stack. It can only build a front end. It can't build a back end or a mobile app. While they both can deploy, with Google AI Studio, you can only push to GitHub. You can't pull from GitHub, which means you can send files to GitHub, but you can't receive files from GitHub. Whereas in Firebase Studio, you can push and pull. So that just makes it a more complete development ecosystem. You also have the option to integrate more completely with Google integrations. So we can, like I mentioned, have all of these different services that you can build in, all of the different AI tools, including building MCP, Model Context Protocol, which means that what you're building in Firebase, you can start to connect to other agentic AI elsewhere to either help you code or integrate directly with the app you're building. So that's pretty powerful, and I think is going to become increasingly more important in modern development. And then, like I mentioned, we can actually build straight up mobile apps and emulate them. Have this Android emulator view within Firebase Studio that's not possible in Google AI Studio. So I just want to mention that I am going to go much more in depth on all of these features in future videos. I'm going to walk through a bunch of them today, but if there are any elements of Firebase Studio or Firebase generally that you want me to dive deeper into, please leave comments and I will prioritize making videos for the topics that get the most comments. So please let me know the best way that I can help you out. And now, with all that being said, why don't we get started? Okay, so the first thing you need to do, of course, is you need to accept the terms and conditions. Perhaps it's just the lawyer in me, but I do always recommend taking a look through the terms and conditions, especially as it relates to how are your prompts being used, how is your uploaded data being used, who owns the product that you build here, is it Google or is it you? And obviously there's a lot of different components to this, so I recommend checking it out to make sure that you're comfortable with it. My understanding is that on the free tiers, Google uses your inputs for training their models, but you own the apps that come out of it. So you can check the Google Cloud Platform terms of service. I also think when you start hosting your app, you get put onto the paid plan, which I believe means that they don't use your data for training. And I believe also if you're part of the developer program and maybe Google Workspace, they don't use it. But again, please check yourself to make sure you're comfortable with it. And then we can click confirm. All right, so now that we have set up the approvals, we can actually start building an app. And we can use the prototyping AI agent here. So also just to quickly mention, we have the option to start with a blank workspace or to import a repository from Git, which could be GitHub. For example, if you have connected your Google AI Studio to GitHub, that creates a Git repository, which is the actual version control system rather than GitHub, which is the hosting platform. So you'd be able to import those files here and then kickstart your app with what you built in Google AI Studio. But I thought it would be cool. In the last videos, I showed you how to build an app with Google AI Studio, and I built an idea inbox, this here, which has the option for me to be able to upload templates and then basically just jot down notes that I could then send to Obsidian, which is my note-taking app. And then, for example, this was one that came from the app. And I was able to introduce tags, properties, the note content itself, and then have it appear in my Obsidian base to keep track of effectively an idea inbox here. So the idea being that I can just send files directly from here and it will appear in my Obsidian note-taking system. So I thought it might be cool to see what if we could do that again. How would Firebase Studio handle this full system? So in the previous one, this was my prompt. I want to build an idea inbox progressive web application, which is a way to build a web app that can go on the home screen of your phone so that I can use my phone to jot down fleeting notes and ideas and then send them to my Obsidian Vault. How can we make an MVP of this? I basically did the same thing here, the progressive web app, but like I mentioned, since we have the option to build in full stack here, I want to add a few more features to see if Firebase is able to do all of this from the beginning. So I want to have the same templating system that I mentioned before, but I also want to be able to store this in a backend database so that I'm able to return to this app in the future and have all of my templates saved. I also want to be able to sign in with email or with a passkey and zero auth, which is for example, sign in with Google. I want it to be a progressive web app so that it can appear on my phone home screen easily, but also have the option to make it into a mobile app for iOS or Android in the future. Just some more details on the Obsidian element on how I want it to automatically apply the template. And then I also want to start bringing in Gemini AI features. For example, to analyze the content of the notes and auto tag the note with appropriate tags and title based on the content. I also want the AI feature to be optional so that, for example, if you have a good idea and you don't want to send it through an LLM, you can keep it private. And then I'm also going to put a little bit of context on what the style should be. So now let's click prototype and see what happens. Here we go. So right away, it's just jumping in and starting to create the plan for prototyping the app. So let's take a look. So we have the option here to customize or prompt to make some changes here. So the features are capturing notes, fleeting notes and ideas, uploading templates, storing templates in the backend database, a sign-in system, save to folder, opt-in features to use AI to analyze and generate relevant tags or titles. That sounds good. Progressive web app functionality, future native app conversion compatibility. So that sounds pretty good to me. These colors look nice. They look pretty clean, minimalist. So just to quickly show you how I would then use some prompt engineering here, we have the option to customize by clicking this customize button here, and it pops up with the options that I can directly write in here, or I can prompt and make changes. So for example, maybe I want to say, make the blue a bit deeper, the yellow a bit more golden. Should also have an easy tab type option where the uploaded templates are selectable from the note writing system. So you can just go back and forth and iterate as much as you want. And these features will now be added directly into the blueprint itself. So it's very important to get this initial plan set in a way that you're going to be happy with, because it's always easier to add more features and build on top of it. Honestly, this is maybe a little complicated for what I would probably start with. I might, for example, build the app first and then add authentication in, but I want to see if it's able to handle all of this because I've already shown you how to build the basic version in the previous videos on Google AI Studio. Cool, these blues look better. We can also take a look at the stack here. We can see what we're working with. So Gemini and GenKit, so this is adding AI features. And then we're dealing with TypeScript, which adds type safety to JavaScript, which means it's a lot easier to debug and make sure that you're not going to have errors in your system. We're going to use Next.js, which builds with React, and then Tailwind to help style it all. All right, let's click prototype. So right away, you can see that it's already just jumping in and writing all the code. It's already written hundreds or thousands of lines of code in like 3 seconds. This is in real time right now. So it's pretty wild how you can use AI to do this. You can see it's actually built in an env file, environment file, which was not possible in Google AI Studio. It didn't work properly in here. And this is basically a way for you to store the secrets of your API keys to make sure that they don't get added into your main application. They stay hidden, they stay secret. So all of the green lines here are the lines of code being added. The red are lines of code being removed. So as we sit here and watch, we're going to see that this prototyping agent is going to keep coding and just adding a whole bunch of features and files. So let's see how it goes. You can also see here that it created this docs blueprint file, which means that there's now a doc element. And I actually talk about this a lot more in the first video on how to build apps in Google AI Studio. But it's really important for you to, as part of what's called context engineering, keep track of the architecture of your app, the goals of your app, how you want to deploy it, the roadmap, the future features you want to add. The more you can build the context into these files, the safer you are in the long run, because you always have this context that the AI can refer back to make sure that your vision stays on track. So that's a really important element. We can also see that we have the option to switch to code up here and to publish the app. So I'm going to show you how those work in a moment once the initial preview is created in this prototyping ecosystem. Honestly, it always just blows my mind that it's able to do all of this. Like you can see here in real time, it's coding just hundreds or thousands of lines in seconds. If I were to try and do this myself, it would take me literally months to try and figure out how to do all of this. So I just think it's amazing that we're able to use AI to build apps for ourselves. And of course, it's not going to be perfect on the first go. That's not the point. But we are able to create things in a way that we never were able to before. And just as a quick warning, as I'm about to start getting more into the backend and authentication and potentially payment integration, I do want to mention that depending on the type of app you're building, you have to be very careful what you're doing if you don't actually know what it is you're doing. If you're not a developer and you're not familiar with launching an application that has payment integration, you want to be very careful because, for example, if you build an app that's easily hackable and you're able to have someone come and hack and pull all of your payment info, you might be liable. So it's very worth considering. Start simple, start building something for yourself first. And then if you're actually at a point where you think this is an app that could be something that you want to launch for everyone, maybe consider reaching out to a professional. Okay, cool. So it just built that. It took about maybe 3 minutes or so to get everything working. And let's see how it looks. Okay, so we've got the login option or the sign up, the idea inbox. Cool, this looks pretty good. I mean, this is a great landing page already. Personal space to quickly jot down ideas, notes, and inspiration before they disappear. Get started for free. Instant capture, AI tagging, custom templates. That sounds pretty cool. So now let's take a look at what are our next steps. We've got this initial app built, but we can see here that the prototyping agent is telling us, hey, we need some more elements here. We need a Gemini API key. So this is where you can just click auto generate, and this is going to create a new Gemini API key for you. Or you can go back to Google AI Studio, and there's an option to get an API key here directly. So I'm just going to click auto generate for now. And that way I have a new dedicated API key specifically for this application. Basically, this is just going to let me connect to Google's features to start using Gemini. And with most of these Gemini API keys, you're able to have a certain free threshold. So unless you connect billing to that API key, you're not going to have to pay for it. And cool. Okay, so it's telling me that if I want to make changes directly, I can go click the code button up here. But why don't we click let's get started for free and see how it goes. Cool, so it takes me to the sign up button. I will type in my email and password and see if I can create an account. I also want to quickly mention this button down here, which is pretty cool. This is where you're able to annotate and you can draw and change using Excalidraw basically. And then you're able to modify how you want the app to change by drawing on it. And then you can send that to the Gemini chat on the side here and it will go and apply those features for you. That's a cool way to do visual coding. I'm gonna click create account. All right, there we go. I was able to sign in directly. So we can see here, it doesn't look like it actually signed me in because it's not using my real email. It's just using user@example.com. So just before I get into that a little bit, let's just take a look at what it built right off the hop. So this is the dashboard with the note input. So honestly, it looks kind of similar to what we have here. And then we just have this template section. So let's see how that looks. Click on templates. So we can manage custom templates. We've got a book summary. Let's click edit. Let's see if the upload works. All right, so it looks like we've got a lot of placeholders here, but that things aren't exactly working. Oh, but it looks like the AI assistant is working. Auto tag, auto suggest. Cool. So we have the AI features working. The export is not, and it looks like the sign-in is not either because it's got this generic information. So this is where I've got two options. I can keep working with the prototyping agent, or, and I'll just show you this for now, I can switch over to code. And this takes us to the actual coding environment, or IDE, integrated development environment. So basically what this means is I can go in and I can click and take a look at all of the files. And it's going to build the preview on the side here in the same way that we just saw with the prototyper. I just want to take a second to show you how this area works and how it looks because I know this can be kind of overwhelming. So we have the option to click into files on the left-hand side here. That's what this is. We can search. We can connect to GitHub, which I'll show you in a moment, and we can add more extensions. So this is actually kind of cool because this is coming from VS Code. It looks like it's a fork of VS Code, which means all of the VS Code extensions work. So let's say we wanted to start operating in Python. We could install the Python extension and we'd be able to operate more effectively in here. So that's kind of cool that you can add more extensions depending on what you're building and what's going to help you out the most. On the bottom here, we can see we've got this main button. So this is the Git connection, which is currently not connected. So we have the option here to publish directly to GitHub. That would start creating a version control of our app. And that basically means that we can make changes, we can undo changes, we can test things out. If something doesn't work, we can roll it back. So that's actually a really powerful feature. So I'm going to turn that on right now. So I need to go over to GitHub. Cool, I'm going to paste that in, click continue. It's authorizing VS Code. So it's using a very similar workflow. I need to sign in using my passkey. Cool, so that just connected. And now we have the option here. I can see publish to GitHub private repository. So I'm going to do that. It's now uploading the files. If I open that on GitHub, we can see all of my files are here and I published to the Firebase Studio, which I can rename if I want to. Let's change this to idea inbox Firebase Studio. Now if I go here, because I've made that change, I can click this sync button and it's going to pull and push. So I'm going to click OK. And there we go. We now have version control. So I show this a lot more in how I deploy apps if you want to see a deeper dive into GitHub. And I will make a dedicated video on GitHub if people are interested, so please let me know. But for now, I just want to show you that we now have this option to version control. So just to show you what that looks like, I could go in, for example, and make a quick change somewhere. Let's do it in the docs where we have this blueprint. Click Command S or Control S for save. We can now see there's this little asterisk here. So that it's been changed but not pushed. So now that I've made that change, we can see that there's this little change right here. So I could go and make a commit and I could say updating blueprint, click commit, and then I click sync changes. And now if I go back over to my GitHub and click refresh, we can see that this new commit has happened here. So we can always go in and see a different version of the code. We can see that we made this slight change here. So that's just a really powerful tool that I highly recommend everyone always using, because when you go and make changes with AI, it's totally possible that you're going to be making errors or the AI will make errors. So it's always good to be able to roll back if you want to. Okay, so we now have the first iteration of the prototype, but I'm going to go and make some changes because it's clearly not working to the full level. Just a quick reminder to please like and subscribe if you're finding this video helpful. And if you're looking for more ways to support me, consider joining my membership, as that really does help me out a lot. Also, if you have any questions about what I'm building today, please leave them in the comments as I go through the feedback and then use that to help me make videos that are as helpful as possible. So I appreciate it a lot. Now let's keep exploring. Okay, so I'm just giving some feedback now. This is debugging. And again, I think the most important part of understanding app building with AI is that debugging matters almost more than anything. If it can't handle the ability to fix things, it's kind of useless if you're trying to vibe code or prototype an app, because the whole point is that you're trying to get it to a point where it's workable for someone else to use or for you to use consistently. Basically, I noticed that there's placeholders and it said, okay, yep, you're right, we noticed this. we need to set it up with a real backend using Firebase so that authentication and data persistence works as expected. So there's two ways that we can do this. We can ask Gemini to help to do this for us. And you can see here it's popping up with this little system, set up services, connect to a Firebase project. But we can also click the publish button, and that will set up a Firebase project directly. So what's the difference between Firebase Studio and Firebase? Well, if we take a look at the documentation here, which I have to mention is really incredible for Firebase Studio. They've even got a chat on the side where you can ask questions to get a lot of help, so I recommend taking a look at that if you're running into problems. If we actually want to use the backend feature and the authentication feature of Firebase, that's part of Firebase itself, not Firebase Studio. So we need to consider hosting of the app, and we can connect this to a Firebase project, which means that we'll be able to start bringing in all these features like authentication and data storage. But one thing I want to mention quickly is that you can also set up projects from Firebase directly at console.firebase.google.com. So you can start building out apps here if you want to, rather than going from Firebase Studio. And to be honest, I haven't done this yet myself. I've only been using Firebase Studio, so I recommend checking this out if you're interested. For example, a Flutter app might be an interesting thing that you could do. And you can see here it starts getting into a similar style of assistance with the prototyping agent. But again, yeah, you can explore that if you want to. I just want to quickly mention that once you start connecting to hosting and data storage, you will start getting into fees. So if you host an app, there's going to be different elements. For example, if you want to have cloud storage, there's going to be a fee. If you want to have hosting, there's going to be a fee. And what's nice is that Google has this no cost tier, and you can see this whole range here. This is just under app hosting costs. And I know that this can seem very abstract. It might not mean a lot to you. But if we scroll down, there's this sample bill. And basically what it's showing is that there's a no cost tier. And once you exceed the no cost tier, you might start getting some charges. So for example, if you have 10,000 visitors a month, which is a request to your app initiated by the user, if you have 10,000 people using your app a month and you want all of these features here, it's going to cost you about 1 cent. If you have 1 million visitors to your app a month, it's going to cost you about $70. So that just kind of puts things into perspective that I know for myself, I don't expect to get 1 million visitors to my app anytime soon. So this tier, even if it starts costing me something, is going to cost me about 1 cent or less a month. But again, check this all out because it does matter which features you're incorporating. And I just wanted to mention all that before we start connecting Firebase directly. You can connect Firebase by creating a project here and then connecting your app. I did try that. It was a little complicated. You can do it by clicking the publish button, or what looks like the best to me is use the prototyper agent to actually set it up for you, which is going to include setting up SQL for database, Firebase authentication, and all of this. And I do want to quickly mention too that I did try building an app before and it didn't work to do this on its own the first time. So I had to go through the publish button, which is just clicking publish, and it will create all of this for you here. I don't want to click publish yet, so let's just click start. So you can see here, it's already connected me to a new Firebase project, which is exactly what I was talking about over here. You could generate one and then connect it, but it's easier to just set it up directly from here. So just while we're waiting for that, it's been a couple minutes already. I thought I would show you a couple more elements. One thing I want to mention is it's nice that Firebase Prototyper automatically built based on components, where all of these UI elements are all being done separately. And you can see here there's app, auth, login. In Google AI Studio, it built everything in this one single index file, which ended up being 600 lines long. So every time I needed to make a change, it rewrote this entire file, which is a huge waste of your tokens for when you're using the free tier of Gemini 2.5 Pro. But also, it's very easy for the AI to make a mistake. So instead, we can get into what's called modular app building, where it's building all of these pieces independently, so that, for example, if I need to make a change to the sign up page, I can do it to this one single file that's only 50 lines long. It just significantly reduces error and makes it easy to build new features out without breaking old ones. Also, I can show you that we can go back to the prototyper mode if we click this button up at the top here. And we also have the option to introduce new chats, and these would use Gemini directly rather than the prototyper agent. So that's just something to keep in mind that, for example, the prototyper agent might only be operating on Gemini 2.5 Flash, but if you want to switch to Gemini 2.5 Pro to use more powerful coding assistance, then you can start a new chat here, which I can show you in a moment. Cool, so I just refreshed this here, and I want to show you that we now have this Firebase app, which is on the no-cost billing plan with the web app. So this is what was just connected to here, and now the prototyper is still going and just setting up the services. But I can show you for a moment what this looks like in Firebase itself. Again, this is not Firebase Studio, but Firebase. We start getting into a lot more features here. So some of this we were already doing in Firebase Studio. But for example, if we click on the project overview, we can start connecting different integrations here, which I believe is what the prototyper is setting up. It looks like there's different features here. So for example, under build, there was app check. You can start adding different elements. This is what we're working on right now, is adding in authentication. So there's a lot of features that we can get into, and I don't really want to touch too deeply on them right now because I'm just showing you an overview of Firebase Studio. I just want to show you that these things are possible with Firebase. So again, let me know if there's any element of all of these features that you want me to dive deeper into, and I'm happy to make a dedicated video on it or show how these features can come together in more practical use cases. We can also start bringing in analytics. We can bring in more AI features. We can connect Google Analytics so that you can start tracing all the users going onto your website so you get an idea on how many people are coming to your site. There's a lot you can do here. Okay, so it looked like it kind of froze with the setup service, so I just stopped it and then asked, are you frozen? And it said no. And I think this is doing what it was trying to do before. So if you run into an issue like that, please just keep in mind that this is experimental. So there's lots of things that you can do that you might need to prompt the AI. And again, I'll show you how Gemini works in a moment to use Gemini 2.5 Pro so that it can be a little bit more of a powerful coding agent. But we can see here now it's running through and updating the Firebase integration that we just set up here. And right now we are on the Spark plan, which is no cost. So that's great if you want to get going for free. And let's see how this goes. I'm just going to do a hard reset of the app. So I just started the backend server. That was already a difference. And basically what that means is it's turning on the Firebase storage so that when we connect to the app, we're able to start saving documents there. All right, it looks like we got an error. And again, this is where you can just go and debug. I'm going to tell the prototyper, hey, I got some errors. Can you please debug the errors? And we'll see how it does. If it doesn't do a good enough job, then I'll switch over to Gemini. Okay, so we got another error. I'm going to start a new chat here. And this is where we have the option to switch from the built-in model to Gemini 2.5 Pro. But if you want to do this, you have to add your Gemini API key, which, for example, you can get from Google AI Studio. So I'm going to go grab one here. I'm going to switch over to Gemini 2.5 Pro and see how it does. I'm just going to copy the error. And you can see here that Gemini itself, the chat versus the prototyper, I have to go in and manually review the changes and click update. I can just change on auto run and it will auto apply the updates here. So you can switch between plan mode, preview the changes, and auto apply the changes. Cool, that seems to have fixed it. So why don't we give this a go again? Okay, so just putting in something random, we see that we get this auth API key not valid, please pass a valid API key. So this is where when we set up the Firebase project, it hasn't connected fully. Remember we got that error in the prototyping system before. So I think this is where we now can go up to the publish button, link my billing account, and then click setup services so that the app hosting all gets set up correctly. So I'm going to click that for a moment. Okay, so that set up the hosting. I'm going to click publish later. Cool. So I think maybe actually there was another issue here. It looks like we only had the Gemini API key. Now I'm running into this issue here, so I'm going to copy it over to Gemini and just ask Gemini to debug based on this issue. So this is a key element of working with AI coding, is that as you go through and run into errors, it can teach you how to solve your problems. For example, this is telling me that I'm missing this file here. So if we go over to config, we can see that the Firebase config file is all not filled in. So this is, I think, what failed earlier. Again, this is where we're in experimental mode. So basically, I need to go to my Firebase project, which is why I wanted to show you this earlier. Go to project overview, select the web app, select config, and then copy the config into this area here. So let's do that for a moment. Project overview. Let me go down to the bottom here. I just took the information from below here. I added them into my Firebase config file. And now I'm going to hard reset the app and see if it works correctly. So that's going to restart the backend server. Cool, so that worked. Now there's this random user. We have test at whatever that is.com. So that just shows that I am able to sign in. And now if I go back to Firebase Projects and click on authentication, I can see users. And I can actually see the user, the sign in, and the unique ID that they get. So this is where you can go to sign in. You can add different types of providers. For example, I can add sign in with Google. And you can just customize all that here as you want to. If you sign in with Google, you're going to have to create a Google client ID. So I'm not going to show you that right now. But let me know if that's something you might be interested in. And we can control if we want to just allow them to do email password or do passwordless sign in by emailing them a link. And there's a lot more that we can get into here. Okay, so next I want to see if we can get the database working. Go over to template. Let's see if the backend storage works. Oh, it says could not load templates. So we can take a look at the web console. Missing or insufficient permissions. So let's go back over to our Firebase. It says my database is ready to go. So you can see that there's these web console errors on the bottom. I can always click on them and pop it up. For example, the invalid credential, that was what we had before. Now we're getting this missing or insufficient permissions. So I can just click help with this error and it will post the error into Gemini on the side and help Gemini debug it. I don't want to spend too long on this because there's a lot of different errors that you can run into. It's not possible for me to show you all of them. The key here is to figure out how you can run into these solutions. For example, it's telling me that I hit a Firebase security rule. We're successfully communicating with the database, but it's rejecting our request to write. So it's adding some error handling to give us more information to figure out what we can actually do to solve this issue. And then we'll go through and debug, and hopefully I'll be able to connect to the Firestore database here so I can start to see the files show up. You can see it's switched now to pay as you go. And this is because I'm now using the Google Cloud service, which is nice. Just to add a note that we can create a budget here. So I can put for this particular account, I'm going to create a 10-cent budget just to make sure I don't have any accidental issues. For example, people trying to hack in and use this tool. So then it'll just crash the app if it starts getting too large. Cool. So I just added some error handling. I'm going to click create again. Seems like it's a permissions error. Let's see what it does. Okay, so I'm going to keep going through and just debugging this. So I just managed to fix my backend data system, so I'm just going to very quickly explain how that happened. Gemini was helping me, and it was making the correct changes to the rule actually in the prototyper section. But you can see here, these rules did not match the rules that were in Cloud Firestore itself. What I needed to do was take the Firestore rules that Gemini had created inside of Firebase Studio, copy that, and create a new version inside the database, and then click publish. Once I did that, I was able to save the note, and you can see here it worked perfectly. So let me just see now if I can add a template. Cool, there was a new template created. And if we go over here and click refresh, we should see that there's a new collection now for templates, which we do, and we can see the user ID that created it. So now what we have is we have the option for authenticated users here, and we have this Firestore database here where users can save notes and templates. So obviously there's a few more features that I needed to add, and I haven't actually connected it to Obsidian yet to add that extra functionality that I was talking about, but I think we're at a pretty good place. So now if I wanted to, I could go here and click Publish App. And it says that the app will be ready in about 5 minutes. And I get this warning here now that the app is live that I do need to update my environment variables. So basically what that means is with this M file here, I have my different API keys. But for example, I have a whole bunch of configuration for Firebase that I would need to now move into this environment so that I could have it run without giving away my secrets to other people. And this is using Cloud Build. So if we click on that, it takes us over to Cloud Run, where you can see it's actually running the app and getting it all set up. So if you want to learn more how to get Google Cloud running, I do recommend checking out my How to Deploy Apps with Google AI Studio because I walk through Google Cloud Run in more detail. And this brings me also to a bit more of the security issue that I can talk more about in another video, where we want to have the environment variables protect. So for example, if I click on the Firebase button here, we can see there's a secret manager. So this is just a way for me to keep certain things like API keys hidden from production. So that's a very important consideration. So just while that's deploying, I just thought I would do a very quick recap on what we've done. We've built a fully functioning application that has the ability for me to write notes, upload templates, and then save those notes to my actual backend where they've got a collection of information so the data persists. And I've also introduced an authentication layer so people are able to sign in, and I can go and update that as much as I want to. Then I was able to publish the app, which is in process, and this app would then be live for anyone to use. This is where, in comparison to Google AI Studio, that did a great job of prototyping this and getting an idea into a reality. But then to get that reality into proper production with a backend, authenticated users, potential payment integration, that's where Firebase is much more powerful because I was able to build and integrate all of this backend connection directly within the same system that I was doing the initial coding. Google AI Studio is a great sandbox for figuring out what you want to do, but if you want to make it into a proper app and then in the future, for example, create it as a mobile app, Firebase is going to be much more helpful because it lets you do all of these things all in one place. And there's so much more you can do with this. I recommend checking out the docs to see what you might be interested in. And then you can start to just experiment with adding more features to your app. As you go, you can continue pushing it to GitHub so that you can track your commits and you can always roll back if Google makes an error. And yeah, please let me know if there's anything that you... Oh, and here we go. Perfect timing. It says the app is now published. We can go here and there we go. It is live. So I would be able to log in and I can actually run the full app. Here it is. And this app is available for anyone. They can go to this URL at the top, which I might pull it from production for right now while I have a few more features I want to add to it. I just wanted to show you how easy it would be to actually just go from the idea to coding to debugging to setting up the backend, the auth system, and then publishing the app so others can use it. It's pretty powerful that you're able to do all this in one go, and I'm very excited to explore Firebase more. And that was just a glimpse of the power of Firebase and Firebase Studio. There are so many features and integrations, so many layers that you can build into this stack that you can make your app as customized as you want it to be. The goal is not to get it right on the first try, but to iterate, to recalibrate, and keep building and testing until you have something that does exactly what you're looking for. Just a reminder to please let me know in the comments if you have any questions or if there are any features or integrations that you want me to focus on in future videos. Your feedback really helps me hone in on what's going to be the most helpful for you and for everyone else, so I really appreciate it a lot. If you found this video helpful, please like and subscribe. I am working on making YouTube my full-time career, so any support you can give me is very much appreciated. If you're looking for more ways to support me, please consider joining my membership. You should also check out my other videos on coding with AI Studio, as people have been finding them very helpful. In these videos, I go through much more in depth on the strategy behind vibe coding and how you can work to build out your ideas and make them as good as possible. Thanks again for watching, and I will see you in the next video.